Trevor's unavailable right now, and rather than sit around waiting for him to return, I'm heading out on my own for a series of shorter conversations with authors, creators, and other interesting people. Think of it as a typical no-win scenario episode, just with fewer arguments, less supervision, and no Trevor to stop me. Welcome to No-Win Scenario presents Don's Away Mission. And don't worry, Trevor will be back soon.
I haven't listened to anything you've said in the last 20 seconds.
Damn it, Trevor. We had a shtick.
Line.
Two friends who hate each other.
Rude.
Talking science fiction.
It has become this cultural phenomenon.
Along with some special guests.
I appreciate what Star Trek did to me.
I would love to have this book get banned.
That wasn't acting. That was real.
Do you know what our YouTube channel is?
Absolutely not. No-win scenario.
With Trevor and Don.
Okay, we're not doing that.
Boom.
So my guest today writes fiction from the inside out. Nataliya Falovich immigrated from Russia at 22 to the U.S. She earned 3 master's degrees, became a speech-language pathologist, and built a business in New York City. And then at midlife, started asking what happens when the life you've built no longer fits the person that you've become. That question became her novel, Velvet Blade, a world she describes as ancient and timeless, where power, desire, and transformation play out through the female body and consciousness. She also runs the Substack Vulnerable Chaos. She's here to make the case I find genuinely interesting that speculative fiction isn't only about systems, technology, and futures. It can be about the hidden architecture of the inner world. Welcome to No-Win Scenario. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Don. Thank you so much for having me.
So you told me, when we were conversing, you told me that your work sits like slightly outside of traditional sci-fi. It's mythic and internal rather than technological. So for viewers or listeners of this podcast who are more into that traditional sci-fi, like make the pitch, like what does speculative fiction gain when we sort of look inward, and how does that come out in your work?
Well. That's an interesting.
I'm going to start you with a hard one.
Yeah, you started with real pitch. Okay. Let me tell you this. I actually do love science fiction. But what has always fascinated me isn't technology per se, right? It was always people, okay? And whether a story takes place in the future, maybe in another galaxy, right? Or thousands years in the past, I'm always asking actually the same question, who are we, right? What drives us? No, I would say why? Why do we crave power? Why do we crave freedom? Why do we crave love or belonging? So those questions don't really change necessarily, right? But the setting changes, right? But the human nature, it doesn't change, right? So that's probably why my novel, Velvet, feels a little different because it's about predicting I wouldn't say it's necessarily about predicting the future, right? But it is about exploring something really timeless, okay? Because the story actually came to me after I did a couple of past life regressions. I know it sounds very, unusual to some people, but this is how it began for me. So whether someone believes, that's the past story, life, or exists, or simply the subconscious doesn't really, it doesn't really matter to me. Okay. But what mattered was that the story felt incredibly real to me. And once I started writing it, I realized that it wasn't just about one woman in an ancient world. Okay. It was about patterns that still exist today, okay? And we do struggle with power. We do struggle with identity. And we still ask how much of ourselves we are willing to sacrifice to belong somewhere, and what it takes us to reclaim our own voice. So I think speculative fiction becomes even richer when it looks inward, right? Instead of only outward. So it's not just asking what will the world become? It's asking who we will become, So for me, that's the kind of story that stays with you for a long time, and even after you finish the last page. So something like that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there's a lot there in what you said. I think if we stick to speculative fiction for a second, what people don't understand is they think it's about space or the future or weird technologies. It's really, that's just always a shell, right, for telling stories about who we are as people and connection. It just, whether it's in the future, it's in the past, it's modern day, that doesn't really matter because, I feel that storytelling ultimately is about who we are, internally and how we communicate with others. Like when I'm teaching, I'm always talking about how the best stories have two parts to it. There's the best stories are the ones, and this is in like a film class, like where the character or characters internal conflict, they need to like overcome their internal trauma to beat the external conflict, whatever that is, right? So if the meteor is coming to cross them, they have to go do something, but first they have to reconcile with their mother or something along those lines. And when those two sort of things are intertwined, right, storytelling is much more rich. So so that makes a lot of sense. For you, I'm always curious, like where the need came from for this kind of storytelling. Like why, you've done all these things, like, why now do this? And where did this story come from personally? I mean, because you also, you were hinted at it with this past lives regret, thing, but take us through that.
Listen, first of all, I completely agree with that. I think the external story is what keeps us really turning the pages, I think. But the eternal journey that stays with us when we close the book, that's what I think. So if I think back to where that came from for me, I don't think it really started with writing. It started with me being curious about people, okay? Because I've always been like fascinated by like why two people go through same experience and like they come away with with completely different outcomes. You see what I'm saying? Like why one person becomes like resilient while another, let's say, carries the wounds for like decades, and why we repeat the same patterns over and over, even when we know that they are hurting us, right? And those questions have like really always interested me more than the setting itself, I would say, right? So when Velvet came to me, like after those my experiences with like past life regressions, what struck me most like wasn't really a historical world of it or like a mythology part. It was more like the emotional truth for the characters and their fears, their loyalties, like their desires for freedom, their like struggles to discover who they really were. And those emotions like felt incredibly familiar to me, basically. So even though the story was set in another time, right, the emotions are still human to all of us, and I think that's why I write actually the way I do, whether like it's an ancient civilization, like whether it's a present day, or as some kind of like a speculative world somewhere else, right? I am really exploring the same thing, basically. What does it mean to become yourself, right? What are you willing to lose, right? What are you willing to fight for, right? In that process, because I don't believe readers really fall in love with like worlds necessarily. Okay, I think they fall in love with the people inside those worlds that we create, and the world. I think that we create right inside our novels, right? It draws them in, but the emotional journey, that's what makes them stay,
That's what resonates.
so that's what I
Right.
think.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people are there for. They're not there for the scenery, sometimes I say. Um, that said, were there rules to your world that you needed to sort of create first before you can get on that journey? Or did it just sort of develop naturally while you were writing?
Let me think about it. For me, I think it was definitely the second though. I didn't
Yeah.
really like sit down with a map or like a set of rules and say, this is how this world is going to work and how this is going to look. Because the story came to me after like those experiences, and it felt more like I was like discovering a world that more than I was inventing one. So I saw places.
Yeah, can you set the scene though? Can you set the scene, because you mentioned a couple times that the past life regression and that's how this story came to you. But can you sort of set the scene? What was that like, and how did this develop from
Yeah,
that? I don't really have experience with that.
it's a very unusual experience to I would say go through, right? But I am the person who likes to explore myself in all the various instances that they are, right? And I think like at certain period of our life, we always start questioning like who am I, right? Why do I do this? And I started asking those questions. And it happened actually after my second son was born, and that was like a very dramatic delivery. And I think for us women, like those very dramatic, very painful moments in our life, they like seriously, deliberately awakens something in us. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's life. It's what it is. And I started like questioning myself. Let me like what did I just create? Is there something more out there, or this is just it for me? And that question started actually my huge self exploration. And I did everything, trust me. I did astrology, human design, anything that's possible in this realm of spirituality to answer that question. And one of them was actually past life regressions, and I was extremely skeptical about that, but I was like, you know what didn't I try? This is one more thing, one more crazy thing into my list of things that I did. Yeah, I was
Why
like, why
not?
not? And I'm extremely adventurous person like this. I go into experiences and I love it. And I did. I went. It's a specific person that has to do that for you. They put you in like a deep meditative state, like with the hypnosis, and you go into that subconscious space where old memories, they come out of you. And I was actually very surprised because I really didn't remember nothing. But you have a recording after the session, and in that recording, I played it and I was like, oh my God, like, what the hell? I mean, I have a very vivid imagination, but whatever I was telling, it was not like I couldn't come up with, with that seriously, because I had no idea where it was coming from. But I still was very skeptical about that. And it took me 3 actually sessions with different people because I was that skeptical to find out if the story that was coming out of me was real or was just imagining things. And, those 3 regression sessions actually proved that the story that was coming out of me was actually right. And every time I went into the regression, more details were coming up as I was like, talking about it. So so yeah, this is a very unusual, thing to do, but I'm very honest about it. So basically that's how it happened, you know.
So, yeah, I mean, inspiration comes from lots of places. So what you were recanting, so talk about how that led directly to like, what's the story of Velvet Blade? And like, did you take that memory or those memories and how does it translate into the story? But I think for people watching and listening, like, yeah, what give us the lowdown on what the book's about.
Okay. so yes, it is an unusual story, and that happened to me a few years ago. So I was coming home and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and those images that I saw, they stayed with me. They stayed with me for days, for weeks, and they were coming to me in my dreams. And it was like very obnoxious, Um, whether you believe it in the past lives or not, it's just your subconscious that was talking to you. So uh and I, for many, like for quite a few months, I was struggling with it. I was like, why does it come to me? And I realized that I have to do something with that. I just have to make it into probably a story. Okay, and I just started writing, and as I wrote, the story actually grew beyond uh what I saw in my initial experience, because the characters became more complex as I started writing. The world itself expanded, the new relationships emerged. So I would say, like, I took my personal story as a backbone, right? But then the whole world started, um, just evolving on itself while I was writing. So. Um, I don't think of Velvet as a transcript, basically, of my regression session, right? That I would say that the regression opened the door, but the novel itself became something much, much, much larger than that. And in its heart, I would say that Velvet, it follows a young woman living in an ancient, like a desert civilization. She's born into a world which is defined by power, tradition, expectations, and over the course of the story, she's forced basically to confront what she really is and what freedom is worth. Okay, so on the surface, it is set in another time and in another world, right? But I think that the questions are very contemporary to all of us, and they are the same questions that we are all asking in different ways, like who am I when I stop living for everybody else's expectations? What am I willing to risk to become myself? So that's why I think the story actually resonates with people, because um they might come from the mystery of how it began, right? But I think they stay because they recognize something in themselves, in the characters while they are reading it, you know.
That makes sense. I mean, it's interesting because I was going to ask you, it seems very clear why it was important for you to write this book. What are you hoping people take away from it? So maybe you could expand a little bit upon that. So they're there for the mystery and for the intrigue in the beginning, but then they're exploring something in this character's journey. And also, what's the connection to the reader, you think? What do they take away from it?
Uh, yeah, the story.
Because you've said that the book
Yeah.
is not a message, right? So what does that mean?
I think that's a very important question that you just asked me. I hope people who's going to read the book and finish the book, they will feel a little more curious about themselves, not because I want them to believe really necessarily in past life regressions or any other like particular worlds, but because I think all good stories, they invite us to ask better questions about our own lives. Okay. And as I was writing Velvet, I realized that although the story takes place in an ancient civilizations, the struggles are incredibly familiar, and we all know what it feels like to be like shaped by everybody else's expectations, and we all know what it is to really wrestle with fear, with love, with power, with desire to belong. And at some point, like most of us face this question, am I living the life that feels true to me, right? Or the life that I think I am supposed to live. Okay. And I don't write books to give people answers. And I didn't write Velvet to give all the answers to the people. I wrote this book actually to create a space where readers can themselves find maybe a little clarity and start asking themselves questions, So if someone like closes the book and says, you know what, I never thought about my own life that way before, then I think that my job as a creator was done, like something like that. And beyond that, I hope that they will simply like enjoy the journey, because I hope they get lost in the world. They can deeply care about the characters. They experience all the emotions. Because in the end of the day, that's why we write stories. This is what the storytelling is about. It helps us understand other people. But through other people, we start understanding ourselves better. Something like that.
There's one sort of element of your sort of biography that I'm curious about, if that influenced this story in particular. But being an immigrant at, what was it, 22 or so, coming in, did that play a part in this story? Or was it so much that those memories that came, that was the driving force? Because it seems to me, coming to another place, especially as, a young adult, that's got to drive some of the impetus of the storytelling.
I would say, yeah. I would say, yeah, absolutely. Maybe like not in, like not like in a literal sense, but definitely on a deeper level. Because when I moved to US, I was like, I was 22. Jesus, that was such a long way. And
It's a year ago, right?
it feels now like it's a different life. So moving to the US at 22 was like actually one of the most transformative experiences of my life, besides like giving birth to my kids. Because when you leave the country, right, you leave basically everything. You leave the language, you leave the culture, you leave everything familiar, like right there behind. And you don't just change your address, you change everything. You change your identity. You start questioning, like, who am I over here? And you are constantly adapting, you're learning a new way of, living, a new way of communicating in many, many, many ways. So you are basically rebuilding yourself inside out, So looking back, I think that experience actually made me very interested in identity, not just the identity that we are given, right? But the one that we choose, right? That question shows up almost everywhere that I write, even in my Substack. My Substack is full of essays, and they are deeply, transformative in that level. So I wouldn't say that Velvet necessarily is like an immigration story, right? It's a story about someone like trying to understand who she is beyond those roles and expectations that placed on her. And in that sense, it actually is my own journey. Yeah, it absolutely influenced by exactly that,
Yeah, it's not about the story, but it's the trigger, right? It's one of the triggers that creates that story, because when you're busy having to rebuild a life and an identity, that forces all this reflection, right, of who you are and what do my relationships mean? What do I mean? What was life before? What the life will future be? And so that's sort of the backdrop, right? As an author, as a creator of anything, that then some other story comes in, but you're still kind of seeing it through that lens. And in that case, it's more deeply, and the storytelling's better because, like we said before, all good stories are about people coming to terms with who they are. I mean, that's why I love the movie Moana, because it's all about this girl understanding just the power of what her name is and who she is. And it's just about identity. And that's what makes a good story for everybody. So thank you so much. So how can people find you, your book, your Substack? What's the best way to connect?
Well, I have my website, which is by my name. It's very easy. It's NataliyaFalovich.com. And there I have all the links. I have the link to my social media. I'm very active on Instagram, on Facebook. There's a link to my Substack. My Substack is called Vulnerable Chaos. And there's a link to my book. The book is available on Amazon. So basically, if you Google my name, I just Googled myself recently. I was like, damn, interesting.
never Google
Listen,
both,
I've
but
never done
all
too,
the time.
but it's extremely interesting. You should try doing it. It's actually, you will find out a lot of interesting things about yourself.
That's a little too unhealthy how often I check. Yeah. There's another Don check. It's different author. And you have anything coming up, or what are you working on right now? Anything?
I'm actually working on my second book. And it's a different book. It will be a nonfiction book. It's still in the works. Lots of my Substack material is gonna go into that book. So, it will be interesting. I will be exploring lots of interesting questions, for women mostly, and actually for men too, but mostly for women, I would say. Yeah.
Well, it'll help us understand women,
Yeah,
perhaps.
basically in my Substack, I have the whole series where it's called The Woman Inside the Right Life, and there I write from two perspectives, from a woman's perspective, and I actually give my sub series is I give like lots of interesting insights for men on how to understand how a woman's nervous system is actually designed. So I have a lot of actually feedback from men about what I write, and I was extremely happy about that. I was very happy that men started to, getting very interested in how we are designed inside. Not only just our head, but our nervous system, how we think, how we feel, the emotions, and things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, another layer of who people are, right? Not just their experience and their brains, but just how their body operates and sort of the hidden infrastructure of all of us. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much for having me, Don. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
That's it for this away mission. Thanks to our guest and to all of you for watching and listening. Please subscribe on all the platforms, and you can email us at nowin-scenario-podcast@gmail.com. Trevor will return, I promise you. But in the meantime, I think we're thriving just fine without his supervision and snark. See you next time.